Hi everyone! The last few days I spent a great deal of my time theory crafting builds for the Rogue. And I gotta say, the one I'm most excited for in Season 2 is the Reign of Arrows Rogue. So this is a build I've been theory crafting like a long time ago before the game launched, but it was not really quite on the level of being like good enough, I think. But in Season 2 we actually get some massive buff for this build, and I think it's gonna be an absolute blast to play. So the main changes that affect this build are here. This is the Word of Hakan amulet. It's like the enabler for this kind of build that allows your Rain of Arrows to be imbued by all imbuements at once. And this has some pretty strong implications. And not only that, but they also majorly buffed this thing. So they gave the ultimate skill damage affix plus 200%. So this rolls up to like 93 or something percent now on a fully upgraded item. And they also gave the Rain of Arrows cooldown 300% of the normal value. So you're gonna get 30% cooldown for your Rain of Arrows. And to get off the vampiric powers in Season 2, you can actually get it down to 27 seconds base cooldown before preparation and before flicker step procs, which is the other nice thing that comes with the season. This item here. So like this, you can very easily reset your ultimate cooldowns, and when it's only 27 seconds, well, that's 2 evades, 1 preparation proc, and you're back, basically. So you're gonna spam Rain of Arrows all the time, basically, is what I'm saying. And this is the setup that I made here, and I think this is gonna be hilarious and super cool and pretty strong as well. So I don't think it's gonna be like the best build for Rogue, and you know, not necessarily best build overall or something like that, but it is really good, I believe, and let's just see how this will shape up. I think the power is definitely there for Rain of Arrows to just like obliterate entire screens. And I put in some decent single target damage with rapid fire, with poison imbuement, and you're gonna just melt everything. Dots in general are looking pretty good in Season 2 because of some of the vampiric powers. For example, the flowing veins here with plus 60% damage over time, and some other things. So in general, I think this is gonna be annihilating, and you're not gonna have any issues with both AoE and single target. Now, there are some pretty interesting things that I found out actually when playing this. So I've been doing a bit of testing here, just to try to figure out, you know, what we're gonna do with this Rain of Arrows Rogue. So I've been doing a bit of testing here with this Rain of Arrows Rogue pre-season, just to like figure out some of the mechanics and see how exactly it works. So the skill looks like this, in case you haven't seen that. I wouldn't be surprised because it was pretty terrible until now. But because this Rain of Arrows is imbued by all 3 imbuements, you can actually get some pretty crazy damage scaling going. So number 1, you get the imbuements themselves. So if you look at the skill tree here, you have the poison imbuement. This is like the big single target burst, basically. This dot is gonna stack up really high just from having 12 ranks. You get 4 on the helm, you get 3 here. It's gonna scale pretty high. You can get some poison damage there. And you can also get even more poison damage when you crit. So this build actually has a bunch of crit chances, as you can see here. We do roll crit on the 3 items that we can, the rings and the gloves. And then there's also the position passive that can give you a crit. And if you really want, you can even throw in the concealment for a guaranteed crit here to make sure that you actually get this 75% multiplier for your poisons. But I think that's not even that needed here. And then there's the other imbuements here. There's Shadow Imbuement. So that also gives you extra crit chance in case the target is low HP. But more importantly, it gives you non-physical damage. And you might say this is only 12%, but this is actually pretty massively buffed. So there are 3 separate buffs to this, which is one here, the Corruption Ring, 40%. You can put this on another slot, but I have it on a ring. So 40% increased potency. This means that the poisons will tick for 40% more damage, the shadow will explode for 40% more damage, and this non-physical damage buff is gonna be 40% stronger. So that already puts it to like 18 or 19% or something like that. And then you have another 30% potency multiplicatively with that. So this like 18% actually becomes like, you know, 25% or something like this. And then we also have stuff like efficacy glyph, where you get another 20% increased potency. So you're gonna look at something like 30% or so increased power here. So if you do the math exactly, so we have 12 and then times 1.3 times 1.2 times 1.4, yeah, something like 26%. So I was a bit optimistic here with my napkin math. Either way, it's a lot. It's basically more than double. And well, the same applies for this, and the same applies for the chill here, for example, from cold imbuement. So this usually chills for like 30% per hit, but with like double the potency, you're actually gonna chill for like 60-65% or so. So 2 arrows of this rain of arrow, and this actually shoots a lot of arrows. So if you look at this, you instantly freeze these targets basically. And then there comes the second wave that applies all of the damage to crowd controlled modifiers, damage to frozen enemies. You have frigid finesse in there. So you're gonna get these cold multipliers here, and you're gonna have even more damage, and this is gonna scale really crazy, where in the end, basically nothing has a chance of surviving this rain of arrows, I believe. So this is what we're looking at. And there's also some other quite interesting stuff I found out. So I did some testing here on the Paragon boards, and especially Eldritch Bounty is a thing that I have pretty successfully ignored so far for basically all of my rogue builds. I was not really so impressed by this, but it turns out that if you use Rain of Arrows, you're gonna get all 3 buffs at once. The cold, the shadow, and the poison. And not only that, but the skill itself is getting buffed 3 times as well. So you get 3 times 20% multiplicative damage bonus. Well, I'm not 100% sure if they all stack up as one 60% multiplier, or like, you know, 1.2, 1.2, 1.2. It's pretty close either way. But in any case, you get like a triple buff here, and that is like completely cracked, basically. This makes this legendary node like 3 times as valuable, and you're gonna get some pretty nasty damage bonus out of this as well. So all in all, I think this Rain of Arrows build is gonna be absolutely destroying, but it will be simply not as fast at speed farming. But for something like T100, Nightmare Dungeons, even the new bosses, I actually have faith that this is gonna annihilate, because I put so much like detail on this poison damage. I have, for example, the Ranger glyph here that gives you marksman skill damage, and there's also lots of ultimate skill damage. And it turns out that both these damage stats are actually a multiplicative category for poison imbuement. So yet again, you have some other extra multiplier there that you can scale, compared to other builds that just have this as an additive value. This is based on what I believe is a bug, but this is how it works, and this will make this poison scale even harder. And likewise, on your items, you're actually going to stack up exactly those stats here. So there's ultimate skill damage, for example. We have the diamonds in the weapons for ultimate skill damage. And you have a ton of ultimate skill damage here from the amulet and from the flicker step. And this build is going to have, I don't know, something like 300 or 400% ultimate skill damage or something like that. So it's going to be pretty nasty. In fact, there is so much ultimate skill damage and so much like marksman skill damage as kind of like this own separate category that there's actually not even that much like additive damage left here. So we have a bunch of all damage and actually a bunch of crit damage. So this is another reason why I stacked up so much crit chances. There is simply a lot of crit damage to be had. And this is actually about to get buffed a little bit as well. And especially with the precision passive here, there is a pretty good reason to stack some crits still. So while you could get more damage using especially close quarters combat and trying to activate that, you can get a really massive multiplier for like an even crazier burst. I don't think this will be necessary at all, so I kind of left that out. And also playing around close quarters combat will make gearing even more difficult, and it will also not be that easy to achieve, because yeah, you can get a massive multiplier here. They buffed this to where you get, I believe it's 40% of your damage to crowd controlled enemies as an extra multiplier. So some other rogue builds of mine actually do use that, but as like kind of like a pure ranged rogue where all you have for melee is like dash and shadow step, close quarters combat is not gonna feel so great, I believe. And precision is just kind of like the easier choice here that works well enough, I believe. Especially because you want to buff your rapid fire more than you want to buff your rain of arrows at this point. With all those multipliers already stacked up, I think there's no fear that this is not gonna just kill anything, basically. So this is the setup here. I'm very excited to play this. Obviously, I don't have any like real like testing or so, because it's pre-season. This is all pre-theory crafted, and there will be some tweaks to the setup, I imagine. But if you want to read up on this, I do have the Rogue Rain of Arrow guide written here. So we've just been finishing all of our updates here on Maxwell for all of the Season 2 guides. You see here there's the Season 2 tag on all of them. And this applies to the other classes as well, of course. And here's the brand new Reign of Arrows guide. It's going to be linked in the description, so go check it out. I spent a lot of hours on this thing. And, well, yeah, you're going to see me blasting this build very soon. I'm not going to start with this, I believe. First of all, you need the Word of Hakan to even like play the build, so it kind of like requires this to exist, which luckily is not very hard to get. This usually drops like at level 50 or something. It's a very common unique, but for the race, for world first and stuff like that, I'm probably gonna stick to TB or Death Trap. So we'll see how that goes. But very soon after, I'll be blasting with this build. So stay tuned for that. I'm gonna have an update for you guys. Other than that, hope you're gonna have a lot of fun with the Rogue. I think it's gonna be a really cool season. So good luck, have fun.